All right, welcome to Is It Prophecy here on Israel National Radio, and the show is syndicated as the Messiah Hour on YouTube. You can email me at messiahhour@gmail.com. You can also subscribe to the channel. We have a lot of great interviews up on there. Dr. Gerald Schroeder, Rabbi Ken Spiro, Rabbi Yosef Mizrahi, and much, much more. This afternoon, we're pleased to have on as a return guest. We talked with her before about the Shloshim for the Har Nov Kodashim, and we're going to talk about another serious matter, but get some positive light on it. And back to the program is Shira Nussdorf. How you doing, Shira?
Hi, Ari. Thanks so much for having me. This is like my chazaka. It's the third time's a charm, I think.
That's right. And as I told you off air, you'll be like my Joan Rivers type. To my Johnny Carson.
Listen, at the end of Joan Rivers' life, she was a big Zionist. There was that whole business when people were not standing up for Israel, and a lot of celebrities were coming down hard on Israel. Joan Rivers stuck up for Israel, and she let them know. So you know what? If you want to compare me to one of the first ladies of comedy who was a Zionist, I'll take it.
Yeah, and she did a major Kiddush Hashem before she passed on to the next world. So that was definitely a good thing she did for the Jewish people.
I think it saved her from all the Lashon Hara she did, from speaking negatively about what people were wearing. But yeah, okay.
Right. But now you just said Lashon Hara about her. Now I just said Lashon Hara about him. It's a whole circle thing. So, speaking of another person that's done a lot for the Jewish people, that's Jeff Seidel, and a lot of people listening know who Jeff Seidel is. There might be a few that don't, but tell us a bit about his work. He's done work at least since the 80s of what the main thing he does, but tell us a bit about him for the audience.
Well, I had the pleasure of speaking with him tonight, actually. I had to catch him at Ben Yehuda after the show that I saw you at today. There he was at 12 o'clock at night running around inviting people for Shabbat, and that's really what he did. And, it's so amazing. Here, I wanted to go and try and interview him about his experience that he had on Tuesday of a terrorist attack, and he couldn't even, it was hard for him for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it was, to just focus on himself and what he was dealing with, because he just wanted to keep helping other people. He wanted to invite them for Shabbat, and he specifically looks for young people, students, less affiliated Jews, people who maybe have yet to make Aliyah and don't know people, and he really helps place them in warm, friendly homes where they can feel the Jewish experience of being in Israel.
And this is something he's done for a long time, at least since the 80s, setting up Shabbat meals right outside the Kotel, and he's not a Chabadnik, he's not really affiliated with any group, he just kind of does this on his own, and he's been doing it for a long time, right?
He said 33 years, I think.
33 years, okay. So 1981. That's pretty impressive. Now, he did this on his own initiative, basically. He wanted more people to keep Shabbat. That was the idea behind it, right?
He didn't exactly talk about how it came to be so much as what he feels that he could do. And it seemed to me that he, no matter what he does, he feels there's always another person to help. And it's interesting because on a personal level, he's not the most warm and fuzzy guy. When you talk to him, he's very straight. He's very, he could be sarcastic to the point, and yet he's a big ball of chesed. All he does is help other people. And so it's really interesting to see, here's a person, he's not, as you say, when you think of Chabad and Shabbos, they're sort of warm and mushy, and he's practically to the point. Like, you need a place, let's go. Hey, how you doing? Right. So it's an interesting combo. And he really relates, I think, to music, and he tries to see where people are at in terms of where they're holding culturally, and not make judgments about them and just get it done. I think that's sort of like what he does.
Because he set up a lot of people that are not Shomer Shabbat, right?
He set me up before I was, as far along as I am now. When I first got to Israel, I didn't have the connections that I do now in terms of being able to go to different families' homes or be placed in an environment. And he set me up, and it's really made quite an impression. I'm still connected to people in the old city that he introduced me to initially years ago, and I've really taken that with me to where I'm at now in terms of hosting meals in Tel Aviv, because inspired by the knowledge of what it's like to come to a city and not know anybody and not even know fully what it means to be Shomer Shabbat and how beautiful an experience that could be. So, I don't know what he gains on a personal level from doing this chesed, this kindness to others, but I know I've benefited from it. And I think the accident, or rather the attack that happened to him the other day, maybe all the good work that he's done, he sort of has like a little protexia up there.
Yeah, he was reported as saying it was a miracle he survived, and we're going to play his interview in the second half of this program, but I want to know if the people that, I don't know if you want to call them people, whoever attacked them, the terrorists, did they know it was Jeff Seidel? Was this a target attack or was it just random? Tell us a bit about that.
I don't think it was targeted specifically at him, knowing who he was. You know, a while back there was a rabbi that was attacked by the Temple Mount because of his outspokenness. He was murdered, in fact. His outspokenness about going to the Temple Mount. Jeff Seidel was on his way to a funeral with a procession, and one of the things that he said was that they had alerted the police in advance that there was going to be a funeral and a procession of cars, and that there should be increased police
security
presence there, because unfortunately the time that we're at now, a person can't just ride anywhere. And I think it's sort of hard for people maybe in America to understand what that really means. You know, somebody could say if you go into a bad neighborhood, you might get carjacked, but these people are not doing it to gain anything. Like if you would attack a car because you want the car, it's not like I can understand it, but okay, there's something to gain. It's really just about terrorism and trying to intimidate Jews from being here in the land. And one of the things that Jeff said was that he thinks they're trying to block our prayer or our holy sites, and being set up on the sides of the roads on the way to our a cemetery is something that is clearly preventing us. You know, even they say the fact that the Temple Mount is there. Your show, The Messiah Hour, talks about the legacy of the Messiah, and one of the things that I believe is supposed to happen is that he's supposed to pass through to where they have now put
a barricade. They blocked it up, yes.
Not just a barricade, but I believe there's an Arab cemetery.
Yeah. And they think the Messiah can't go through a graveyard, and that's why they put it there. So
yeah, it's
strange.
I think it's really hard for people to understand. Like, you know, I'm originally from New York, and I wasn't brought up in an environment of racism in terms of something that we looked at as a normal thing that is just imminent. You know, in America, we've had a lot of problems with race, and even especially now, we're seeing more and more surfacing of race relations problems, and there's a solution that people want. They want, if it's the police, to be less violent initially towards people, or if they want more jobs in other fields opened up. There's a negotiation of like, what is it that you want and how can we do that, and sort of a universal page and understanding that there's a goal of unity and trying to live a better life. And here the reality is that the Palestinians who are at war with Israel are not trying to live here in peace with us. They're not trying to say, well, okay, you know, you have certain parts of Israel and we'll take others. It's just they don't really want us to be here at all, which is so, you know, it's so ironic because there are 22 other Arab nations which they could comfortably live in. And what we're seeing over the summer, all the craziness that we saw of anti-Semitism all over the world, is that we as Jews, we really don't know where we can comfortably live if not Israel. We don't know when our friends or neighbors or Facebook buddies are going to turn around and say some kind of anti-Semitic thing. So it's difficult as nice, normal New Yorkers to say, like, well, maybe, you know, are there areas that we shouldn't drive to because it's dangerous for us to pass through an Arab village? I mean, that sounds like a terrible thing to say. I would never say, like, I don't want to ride through parts of Brooklyn because I'm afraid of black people. That's just not, it's not something that I'm comfortable with. It's not something that I do. I'm actually from Harlem. In terms, I've lived in Harlem for 17 years, and people always say, like, oh, are you intimidated? So the idea of having to say, well, maybe we shouldn't drive through Arab neighborhoods to get to cemeteries, that's like a horrible thing to take away with. But that's really what we end up feeling like. We end up feeling like, are there places that are just not safe for us to go? Because if we're recognized as Jews, we could be attacked and killed. And it's not random. It's on purpose. You know, it's not because Jeff Seidel has helped thousands of people over the years. It's because he's simply a Jew, and that's very much on purpose that his car was attacked.
Again, this is a Prophecy on Israel National Radio, and the show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel and email me, messiahhour@gmail.com. And just a real quick clarification, people are listening. Yehuda Glick was the man attacked regarding the Temple Institute, and he survived. His assailant, though, was murdered, and that's what happened there. With Jeff Seidel, he was coming from Mount of Olives for a funeral procession, right? That's where this whole thing took place.
Right.
Did he talk about, I mentioned briefly that he thought it was a miracle that he survived, and when he spoke with you about it, did he clarify that? It was something he saw, or just the fact that there wasn't a lot of security and he lived? Why did he feel it was a miracle?
Because he wasn't pulled out of the car. He said that they were a lynch mob of mostly teens trying to attack him, and they broke all the windows, and except the front one wasn't damaged as much. And he said it was a miracle that they didn't pull him out of the car and really hurt him physically in hand-to-hand combat, and that all the cement blocks that he said were thrown at them, he said that they were prepared, like that it was set up for this. It's not like he walked into the wrong neighborhood and so they just took whatever rocks they could find. It's that they had this waiting. So it's a miracle that, just as people talked about the Iron Dome, they had all these rockets that were fired directly at us, and very few Jewish casualties happened, which, the public turned around and said, look at all the Palestinians you're killed, and barely any of you guys are killed. That's not because they didn't try. That's because they didn't succeed. And we just finished the holiday of Hanukkah, where we're remembering the miracles that God bestowed upon the Jewish people. And, people think it's about oil lasting for 8 days, but that's sort of like the picturesque hallmark stamp of approval that God said, like, yeah, you see, I'm with you guys. The fact that you won these wars when you were so few in number against so many, it's not without the strength of God that you did that. In just the same way that, I can change nature and make a little tiny flask of oil last for 8 days. I can make you last for thousands of years, even though for thousands of years, so many different armies have tried to attack you.
Now, Jeff gave an interview with Rich a couple of days ago, a print interview, and he mentioned that there were 15 to 25 people attacking him. Is that what he said to you as well?
Yeah, he said there was like a mob of people. I don't know. He didn't have an exact count, and if you're going to play the story, you'll hear it again. But I think what's scary is that they're teens. I saw you today. You did a program which was so nice. I saw you did a comedy show, a benefit for Crossroads, in which you were trying to raise money, raise awareness for Jewish teens on the street. Now, it just really shows you what can happen if teens who are troubled are not sort of guided in a positive direction. And we see that with these kids. Where were their parents? Jeff talked about finally, after a long time of the attack, finally one adult seemed to sort of shoo the kids away. And it just shows you one adult can really help steer a kid one way or another. And so when we look at the values that we try and put on our kids, we're trying to save the at-risk teens from doing damage to themselves or other people. So just on a side note, Ari, thanks so much for doing that with Crossroads today.
Oh, my pleasure. I hope everyone got benefit out of it. I hope Crossroads got benefit out of it, and some homeless kids can have a place, have some shelter, and get back with their families.
Actually, when I was talking to Jeff Seidel, we were, as I said, by what they call Crack Square in Ben Yehuda, and I saw the Crossroads stand there with one of the Mr. Redding was there, that he was on the video talking about being an art teacher, and I saw he was out, late at night, sitting there with the kids drawing, and I asked him, and he was saying he's an art therapist, and what that means is when these kids come at Thursday night to get drunk, he's just there, hanging out, and they see that there's like a cool adult, and they come over, and they just talk to him, and that's it, if we don't talk to our teens or try and redirect them when they're in trouble, so the result is they could be angry mobs who just attack people when they're upset. We see this now in New York in terms of people being angry and upset at police, and in Las Vegas they just shot 2 more cops. Right. If people aren't directed when they're angry, then a lynch mob is something that could really hurt people. And thank God in this particular case with Jeff Seidel and Danziger, they weren't hurt. But the hurt is the anger that people have when they're not used in a positive way to find solutions to what the problem is.
And also, I can't imagine to be attacked general would have to be horrible, but he's coming back from a funeral. I mean, he saw someone that is being buried in the ground, and then he's driving. I mean, he must be horrified. But we were talking about, you mentioned that he perhaps had a special protection because of all the Shabbat meals. And talk about protection a little more with the war in the summer. There's a lot of prayers, and that was a line of defense for us. So talk a little bit about things that have been done to protect the Jewish people and what we can do now.
Listen, I just also want to say that it's not that he has extra protection and that the rabbis in Har Nof didn't.
Right.
Or, we don't know why God does the things that he does. But I saw today when I was just talking to him on the street for a couple minutes, the amount of kids that came over to him and said, "Hey, man, how are you? Thank God you're okay." And, these weren't kids, Orthodox kids. These were kids Thursday night out, trying to have fun, dressed in all kinds of interesting ways, who knew him, who had been affected by him, who he'd reached out to before, who had heard and was moved to find that somebody so giving to other people had been in a position where his own life was at jeopardy. And one of the things that I was saying to him is that, these things should never happen to anybody, but when they happen to people of prominence, perhaps it wakes people up. It makes people realize that they are touched by terrorism. They do know people that have been attacked and that it is close to us, and that whether it's praying or, inviting people to Shabbat or paying for somebody's Shabbat meal, whatever it is that they can do to help, there is a war on terror that's going on right now, and that war is a personal war that says we're not going to be afraid. We're not going to let them intimidate us. And that's what Jeff Seidel did by going right back, Thursday night to Ben Yehuda to invite people for Shabbat, and I'm very sure he's going to be out tomorrow inviting people for Shabbat and on his Hebrew University. War on terror means you don't pick up a gun necessarily to protect yourself, although I have seen people do that now. Now I see people who I would never think have guns walk around with guns on their waistline because they're scared. But war on terror means saying, no, I was attacked on Tuesday, and on Thursday, here I am walking around inviting people for Shabbat.
Now, one of the things, because we are talking about a bit of positivity, but I do want to mention something that Jeff Seidel mentioned is, and I don't know if he discussed this with you in more detail, but he apparently said the police did not show up ever, and that the police were called, they did not show up, and that he escaped because you mentioned that the adult came out and told the youth to leave. Is that what he told you?
He said that sort of stunted them, or he didn't. I mean, I don't think he was writing this guy a letter of gratitude and inviting him for Shabbat, and it's not because the guy was an Arab, and it's not also to take away, it must be scary to stand up to 25 violent teenagers.
Right, sure.
Even the hospital, as he was talking about, the hospital itself didn't even let him in to do anything. So, yesterday, or 2 days ago rather, at the same time that the police weren't guarding him, 2 cops gave me a ticket because I ran across the street when I was trying to catch the train, for real. 100 shekel ticket, man. 100 shekels. I was trying to catch the train.
You couldn't talk your way out of it? I thought you'd be able to do that. I don't know.
You know what? There's a first time for everything.
There you go.
And I honestly said when I got the ticket, because I was still under my 8-day Happy Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah, I said, thank God these police are out here protecting people, and maybe the 100 shekel fine that I'm getting for crossing the street on a red light will go to pay somebody's salary, and there'll be increased police protection. And I promise you that was the thought that I forced myself to have, because it was still under my 8-day Happy Hanukkah complaint-free initiative. So there are cops around, I guess, but maybe their interest is ticketing people.
Yeah. So to talk about that, let's end this first segment with the 8-day Happy Hanukkah challenge, where there's happiness all 8 days. How did that go for you?
On a personal level, it was very interesting for me to see when my buttons were pushed, when did I have the urge to complain. And I got to tell you, quite honestly, talking about ex-boyfriends or new boys who are not asking me out seems to be the common factor. And I realized if I just stop complaining about boys, I look prettier, I smile more. Maybe a nice boy will ask me out. But it was also just a matter of saying, if I felt that I was going in the direction of being upset or wanting to complain, I tried to figure out something positive to come out of it. So it's not like I didn't feel upset about something, like as I said about the ticket. It's more a matter of stopping myself before I went to that place, like a dark place of wallowing in self-pity or looking at the world or God in a negative way. And I personally it was really great to not complain. I really was happier for 8 days, and a lot of people I know said that they did it. There were at least 25 people that told me that they were doing it, and then I kept getting more people coming up to me and saying that they were 25 people, let's say on Facebook, told me they were going to do it, and then more people were coming up to me. There was a girl that came up to me at the Mamila Mall that I don't know, and I guess she had seen the challenge or seen my face talking about it. I went around a couple places, and she told me,
or she heard about it on the show,
or she wouldn't know my face. But
all right. Well, we put a picture up on the side, I think. But anyways, go ahead. I'm stopping your minute. Go ahead.
No, not at all. It's a cute picture with the turtleneck, or the one with the Rav Lau. I appreciate your choice and selections to be my agent. But so this girl came up to me and she told me she was on the challenges, that she was doing great. And so this Shabbat, I promised everybody I'd have a party for whoever was complaint free. So this Shabbat, I'm actually hosting back in Tel Aviv, inspired by Jeff Seidel, who hosted me. But this Shabbat, I'm hosting with White City Shabbat, 150 Americans and Canadians in their 20s for Friday night at the Goren Shul. And Shabbos day, I'm hosting at 126 Ben Yehuda, and that food was donated by Yosef and Chana, who got married this week. It was so amazing. It was also. And it's so nice because, I promised that I would have a big party for whoever was able to be happy this Hanukkah. And I didn't know how I'd pay for such a party, but Baruch Hashem, thank God, when you do good things in the world, so God does good things for you. And he certainly did a good thing by making sure Jeff Seidel came out of this scot-free, because he's going to be placing many, many people all over Jerusalem for Shabbat. And I wish everybody a Shabbat Shalom. And you too, Ari, do you have any good plans for Shabbos?
I do, but we're going to go to a break in 30 seconds. So
I just wanted to make sure you were covered. If not, you're more than invited to come to Tel Aviv.
Oh, I appreciate that. I won't take up on that, but what we're going to do in 40 seconds, we'll go to a break. We're going to come back. We're going to play Shira's interview with Jeff Seidel. I know a lot of people have read what he said. You're going to hear his actual voice and describe what happened. So that's on the other side of this break. This is It Prophecy on Israel National Radio. The show is syndicated as Messiah Hour on YouTube. Email me at messiahhour@gmail.com. We'll be back right after this.